Welcome to Tripadvisor Talk, a weekly discussion show in which we connect with leaders from the travel sector to talk about what's happening, how and when we can start traveling again, and the changing face of our industry in light of recent events. My name is JK, and I'm very excited to introduce my guest today, Sarah Duty, Head of Tourism Visitor Experience at Sydney Opera House, Shane Forrest, General Manager, Marketing and Commercial from the Hobbiton movie set, Vedette Coleman Robinson, Executive Director, Association of African American Museums, and my dear colleague, David King, Senior Director of Supply Advisor. Hi guys. As you can see, today's session focuses on experiences and attractions and asks the topic, how have some of the world's most exciting attractions and tour operators been dealing with the pandemic, and how does the new normal look like for them? I'm really honored and excited that this week we've assembled some of the best experts and operators from iconic attractions around the world to share their thoughts and experiences. Well, the beauty of technology is that I get to start this panel by firstly saying a good morning, afternoon, and evening to all of you guys. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Thank you, JK.
Great.
Good over here in New Zealand. Thanks, JK.
Doing well, thank you, JK.
All right, let's start the discussion with a kind of like a quick rewind, right? Back to kind of like the end of 2019. So we started 2019 we ended 2019 with really a great year for tourism. Just to cite some examples, Sydney Opera House attracted more than 10 million visitors in FY 2019, over $70 billion delivered for visitor experiences, tours, F&B. Hobbiton on your end, about 600,000 visitors with even an expansion in Proof. And I heard that there were even direct flights that were supposed to happen for Auckland and Matamata. And then COVID happened. Today, the Sydney Opera House still remains closed, and Hobbiton just recently opened. Congratulations, Shane. And some museums of the Dead's End, I understand, remain closed today. The question that I have here is, with such change of events, were attractions, museums taken by surprise? And how did your organization first reacted to the change, right? So I would like to invite, the panel to discuss, and maybe let's start with Sarah.
Thanks, JK. I guess for the Opera House, from the point of view of just my area with the looking after like leisure, holiday makers, I guess, we first noticed that there was something happening because we have a lot of visitors coming from China. So the first market that we actually saw starting to decline was our Mandarin tours market coming from mainland China, and that was a bit of a red flag. So we knew that as they started to cancel bookings, that there was going to be something major happening. And then we just saw it starting to sweep through all our other markets. We saw it coming through our Korean market, our Japanese market, as consumer confidence, I guess, just started to drop. And then we started to put together a plan. We started to, we started to have discussions with our CEO and our risk committee about what would be the next steps for us. And performances were the first to close. So we had to cancel all of our performances. Tours, we hung on. We were hanging in there. We were like, no, we've still got visitors. No one wants to cancel all of these bookings for people coming. We're like, no, they're still coming. We're still going to honour these tours. And we've still got food and beverage we're going to serve. And then all of that started to decline. And it got to the stage where we had to, on the 24th of March, decide to close, or temporarily, I have to say, close the Opera House for the first time since 1973. A huge decision for us. Huge. And we are still closed at this stage.
Right. Sarah, I think what's really unique about the Sydney Opera House is that you guys handle major productions and shows, right? There were screen, they were having, they was put up on the Opera House. Was it logistically challenging to handle this? I think on our end as attractions itself, when we're looking at attractions, it's cancelling customers' orders and stuff. But you guys have a whole lot of logistics and stuff to kind of have to manage. Maybe can you share a little bit about what that challenge?
Yeah, I guess for us, from the performance side of it, we knew that we had to start cancelling the performances. Lucky for us, we have a really strong box office team who could reach out, and logistically, like, we had to start cancelling tour tickets. At that stage, we didn't know for how long for. Performance tickets, sorry. We didn't know how long this was going to happen. We didn't know that, it would become a worldwide pandemic, so we're just, doing it bit by bit, month by month. What do we do? We'll cancel these shows, and then we'll reassess it, and then we'll keep reassessing it. So that was the initial step for us, logistically, is going into, we all meet and we all talked about what's our first step, what's our first action. And it was our customers that we needed to make sure that we were either moving them to new performances or, cancelling the performance, and then would we reschedule the performance. Tours, it was a matter of how do we manage with all of our, we do over 586,000 people a year on guided tours. So how would we manage them? Because, you have to think about, we're an international iconic venue. So 86% of our market for tours is from international markets. So they're often only in Sydney for a few days. So how are we going to manage that? So we had to contact, a lot of people on the phones, a lot of people on emails, cancelling, and talking to our resident companies. We also had to engage with the opera, the ballet, the symphony, and make sure that they were okay as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces for it all to come together. I have to say I'm so proud of the way the Opera House has handled this whole situation. We've looked after our customers, number one, but we've also looked after our teams, our staff. We've, really made sure that they've been looked after every step of the way on this journey, because it's not easy to close what we call a little city and make sure that we're really maintaining the talent that we have. And making sure that, everybody is being well informed every step of the way. If that answers that.
Thanks for sharing, Sarah. Wanted to check in with Shane, right, with Hobbiton side. With you guys probably expecting a lot of international audience. Were there signs earlier or to help you manage this entire change? Your thoughts?
Yeah, our story early on sounds quite similar to Sarah's, to be honest. We noticed that there was something pretty serious going on with our China market pretty early on in the piece. So we were reassessing things at that time, looking at what we're going to do if we lost the China market, which accounted to about 17% of our visitors. But then as things started escalating, we were seeing that there was going to be flow-on effects into our other long-haul international markets. So we were sitting down reassessing what was the business going to look like, how are we going to scale the business to be the next 12 months operating as a domestic tourism attraction, and also have our Australian link in there as well. So we were anticipating we'd still have that link into Australia. Australia has always been our largest tourism market for Hobbiton, so we thought we still had a good sized substantial business that would keep us ticking over until the further afield international locations were opening again. But then as the situation, when COVID arrived, the first case was detected in New Zealand, our government took the approach to move pretty hard, fast and early. And as a business, we did the same really. We went from that point when we realised that when people arrived in New Zealand, they had to have 2 weeks quarantine period. And for us as a business, that's when we decided the borders were pretty much closed for international guests, because for our location down the bottom of New Zealand, it's pretty unlikely people are going to fly to New Zealand to spend 2 weeks in quarantine to then start travelling around. We thought that's not realistic. So from that point, when the quarantine period was put in place, that's when we decided the borders were pretty much closed, and we started reassessing things pretty early on. Then the New Zealand government made the call that they were discouraging travel between and around the regions within New Zealand. So that's when, as a business, we made the call, and I think we were one of, if not the first, tourism business in New Zealand to make the call to shut our doors, which was a tough call to make. We haven't done that before, but we thought we had the duty of care to our staff, our visitors, and our community to do our part in the fight against COVID-19. So we closed our business on the 21st of March. On the Saturday, we had a meeting at 1 o'clock, closed our doors at the end of that day at 5 o'clock, and then had a big task ahead of us as we went through and started contacting all our customers. The following day, we had a couple of thousand people meant to be coming through, so it was a big job to contact those people that were travelling through in the next week or so, and then we just kept looking after our customers and managing the process from that point onwards. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, but yeah, I suppose we're one of the lucky ones that we have been able to reopen, which has meant a lot to the team as well, to reopen the doors and start hosting people again, which has made all that hard work and sacrifices that everyone's made worth it, that we can get back to a little bit of normality, albeit at a smaller scale.
Right. I guess the common thematic here for Sarah and Shane is that both your organizations have had international indicators to kind of preempt a possible shift in the change in possible trends. And I think both of you have taken a very swift approach or your organization has taken a swift approach in kind of adjusting for a possible future in multiple scenarios. Moving on to Vedette. So I think the Association of African American Museums itself overlooks a lot of museums, and in my view, museums are domestic, and then also have a little bit of international tourism itself. In your case itself, have you had any such benefit of indicators, or were for your museums really much relying on an overall reactive trend itself to kind of manage the situation? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So our museums, as you stated, are all throughout the United States, but then we also have some museums that are international. So what wound up happening is Seattle was our first outbreak in the United States. That was one of the first. I think Jersey was another. So what wound up happening is quickly on the ground, our museums in Seattle and New Jersey were like, oh, what is this? What do we need to do? We might need to close. And, in the United States, every state is in charge of how they're going to deal with COVID. I'm in Maryland, so our governor was very strict and started shutting stuff down really quickly. A lot of other states were just trying to figure out what was going on. Seattle, Washington, their stuff started closing really early. So what wound up happening, so in Washington, I can tell you that they started closing in March. My museums in Washington, especially Seattle, were just like, we have to close. We're going to temporarily close. I can't say that we're going to close because, with legal reasons, I do not want to lose my job or anything like that. So they temporarily closed, and we start seeing a trend from there. Also, I had my eyes on what was going on internationally because our international market is still very high. As we have people visiting from other countries, they come to the Smithsonian, they come to Texas, they come wherever we are, they find us. And our members are always reporting back to me and saying, I'm just so blown away that we had, folks from New Zealand and folks from Australia. And, Sarah, you guys had a double pandemic, if you ask me. You had the fires as well. So, you're just dealing with all of this drama that 2020 has ensued upon us. And, you just have to follow what's going on. So yes, as we're watching we already saw a decline from Australia because of the fires. But COVID really just made us pivot really quickly. So at first, nobody knew how long we were going to be temporarily closed. I closed my office, the day before Secretary Bunch closed his office. So I really started, I teased him about that I was, I did it. I was the person that said it. But I'm sure he doesn't even pay attention to what I do majority of the time. But I closed our office, and then the very few hours later, Secretary Bunch closed the Smithsonian. And then that's when we saw a ripple effect with a lot of our other museums that were just really trying to hold on. We're not going to close. Our governor didn't tell us that we need to close, but when you're really looking at health and wellness, you don't want people to come into your space and bring COVID and infect other people. So the responsible thing to do, was to temporarily close. And it was a hard decision. It was a really hard decision. We are very fortunate in AAAM where a lot of our museums are, yes, African American museums, but we also have African American focused museums. So what does that look like? That looks like some of the the plantation homes that always see foot traffic, especially so high in the season, in the spring, and in the summer. Now it's summer. Who would know that we were going to be temporarily closed until the summer? But we started to see these things, and you have to do, in my opinion, just speaking to our members, we had to do what was in the best interest of not just our visitors, but also our staffs, our respective staff members, to make sure that they, don't get sick, because nobody wants that on your conscience, that, your staff had to come in and now they're ill. So there are things like that we had to pay attention to. But yes, we paid attention to the whole thing. My phone for our office was kind of ringing off the hook as everybody was pivoting, and we were trying to figure out, what does COVID look like? I mean, you look at the pandemic of 1918, and you're trying to figure it all out. Like, well, what did they do back then? Oh, they wore masks. Let's all do it. So it's one of those things.
Got it. But thanks for sharing. I think the thematic here from the sharing itself has been swift, looking at data, information itself, and overarching, using those indicators and reacting really quickly to what could be a possible kind of change in the business, and also measures to take place itself. And I think that's really exciting. I'm going to go into on David's part here, where, David, let's take a macro perspective. You oversee a marketplace of over 390,000 tours and activities. How do you think the whole entire industry as a whole has reacted to COVID? Maybe you can walk us through some high-level understanding of operationally what you've seen most of our suppliers, our partners, and how has the market coped in light of this whole entire situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think first off, I kind of sit in a spot of, we have our own operational issues and concerns within Viator and Tripadvisor that we're worked through, but I also get to see, kind of looking and talking with the suppliers and operators, kind of some, definitely not the pains that you feel on the ground, of shutting the doors and those types of actions that you have to take. But I mean, I think that, to me, through COVID, I think one of the biggest things that stands out to me is kind of the twofold, the resiliency of the business, right? So everything that Sarah mentioned, everything Shane mentioned, everything that Vidette mentioned, those are not easy decisions to make. And I think that what really is amazing to me is how quickly they were able to make them because of the data and how quickly they were able to act. The other thing is creativity. So we saw probably 2 weeks into when we saw a lot of mass closings, we saw a lot of virtual tours that were starting to come about. That may not be for everyone, but at the same time, it gave attractions, it gave museums, it gave operators a way to stay engaged with their customer. And I think that creativity is something that just is paramount, and is to me something that the tour and attraction world stands for, right? Because, I always like to say we are why people go on trips. And I think it's a great reason. And we gave, I say we, because I'm part of the family, I feel. But you gave the travelers something to look at. And then as that was kind of the first stage that was to me a bit of a shock stage, and like, what can we do to stay engaged? And then I think, what I saw was operators listening to what travelers wanted and needed. And that can come from a safety perspective. That can come from like looking at tours as you're getting ready for when the doors open. What's it going to look like? So there wasn't, to me, there wasn't this long drawn out feeling of woe is me, poor Sydney Opera House, we had to shut down. It was, we had to shut down. What are we going to do when we reopen? And I think that applies to everything that Sarah, Vidette, and Shane are doing on a daily basis. Is how do we make it so that it's going to be even better than it was? It's not going to be the same, but can it be better? And then put all of the efforts into making it to kind of blow away the traveler's perspective. And then, are there different products? Are there different ways that things have to happen? And then, the biggest thing from an operational perspective that I saw from museums was a lot of museums had general admission, and we are seeing museum after museum, attraction after attraction that is going to timed entry, and figuring, it seems easy to say, I know I don't have to say to anybody on this call, to come up with a plan to have timed entry and to get the amount of people through the door that the government allows is no small task. So I think, from my perspective, kind of sitting a little bit on the outside, but very, very engaged and very, very in tune with what's going on. Again, it's resiliency, creativity, and just the desire to make an amazing experience for the traveler.
Thanks, David. I think that in itself is really heartening to know, and I think it shows from all of our panel here that there is a lot of focus on speed, focusing on the customer, and also a optimism that the situation is as it is, but how do we make the best out of it? I think that itself it's a visible thematic itself, and I think it's useful for us to kind of go into this discussion about what are some of the things that we have really done in ensuring that experience itself and that the business offering is still exciting, right? I think we've talked about or seen the industry players talk about going digital, pivoting to going to being a little bit more domestic, adjusting time entries, etc. Well, I'd love for everybody to discuss some of the things that you're currently doing in 2020 right now at the moment to kind of move towards this, and how you're trying to manage the entire situation with the audience. Maybe we'll start back with Sarah again, right? You guys have had seemingly a great digital strategy.
Yeah, we have. I can't take the credit for that one, but that is certainly our head of digital, Stuart. It was amazing coming up. They reacted so fast. I think we did our first digital stream with Missy Higgins on the 1st of April. We've had over 2.5 million views of our digital programs. And that was a really great way for the house to stay connected, not just to the local Sydney-siders or to Australia, but globally. So we connected with a global community, and we've had such positive feedback. People sitting in their houses in their pajamas when they couldn't get out, and everyone was in basically quarantine, watching great talks and ideas, or live performances that had been filmed at the Sydney Opera House. So the feedback that we've had on that and the connection that has given us has been tremendous. We also did a digital tour. So we had one of our guides, Declan, we filmed him and he did a backstage tour. That had 6 times more views than anything on our Facebook page. So it showed to us that people really wanted to still connect with the Opera House. They still wanted to feel part of that community. And we also, I think, were really connecting with people who hadn't ever been to the Opera House or considered to go to the Opera House. So we were growing this new audience just by having this great digital programming as well available to them. The content that is being delivered is of such a high standard. We also, the digital team have also created the digital stage. So while we're closed, we actually are doing still live performances in our Jones Sutherland Theatre. There's no audience. But it is the digital stage, and they're going in there and they're filming some great content that's being live streamed. So we're continuing to grow on something that was initially an idea to stream some of our content, and that idea has just continued to grow as more and more people are connecting.
Sarah, I'm going to follow up on that with a question, right? I think that the big question on a lot of the operators' minds is digital something that they can successfully monetize, right? Like, earning revenue out of all this amazing content. Have you guys had any success in monetizing digital kind of content?
Well, at the moment, the idea is to keep it free, is to share, just to stay connected at this stage. And each month it was assessing, do we start charging for this? But I guess that we have, I don't know, I think it's just almost a commitment to our community just to provide this content free. That's not to say that we may not do a paid digital tour at some stage. It may be, and it depends on how long this continues to happen. We don't know, how long we're going to be in this situation. We're looking to see when we can reopen. Ideally, we'd love people to be, walking through our front door taking a tour. There's nothing like the real experience. So we're looking still in the back of our mind, we're planning, do we do this digital tour that we can still connect with, somebody sitting in Texas that's, their dream was to come to the Opera House, but they just can't get there yet. So how do we still engage with them and connect with them? But give them some really good quality content as well. So yeah, it could be something that we look at.
Right.
I don't
So
want to give too much away.
keeping on the top of minds of people so that they constantly are engaged with the Sydney Opera House through the content that you guys have. Shane, what about your thoughts, right? Digital kind of ride through, walk through Hobbiton, is that possible in your view, or how have you taken the whole change and growth? I mean, now that
I'd
you
do
guys
it, Shane.
opened.
I'd do it.
Yeah.
Please.
All right, I've got 4 customers already. That's fine. Off to a good start. No, I think my thoughts around that is quite similar to what has been touched on earlier. It would be it's an intriguing idea, but how do you monetize that idea and make sure it's good enough quality to monetize it? There's a lot of those digital tours and things out there at the moment that still at the moment to me feel that little bit too gimmicky to then be expecting people to pay for. But as a marketing tool, as Sarah touched on, I think they're hugely successful. It's a good way to give people a little glimpse and a little insight into your offering and what you're offering and what you have. And doing something on a small scale that it's just a little peak, I think is a lot easier to do as a high quality that reflects your product. So during the lockdown period, sounds like most of the people on the panel, our interaction on our social media channels skyrocketed. Everyone seemed to want to stay connected to Hobbiton, see what was happening out there. So our 360 content had huge views. It was our busiest time online. And we were quite lucky as well. Being a movie set, there were things happening in the Lord of the Rings world that we could leverage into our space as well. The movies were just made available on Netflix. So it was a good time for people to be sitting down watching the movies. And as a flow-on effect, when we reopened our doors on the 30th of May, we had a lot of families that had sat down with their kids for the first time, watched the movies, and now we're out there exploring the movie set. So that was a nice flow-on effect from people engaging with that content during lockdown. And of course, Andy Serkis read the books during that time as well, and there was a cast reunion that was held on social media as well. So we leveraged a lot of those bits and pieces together. And I suppose we were in the fortunate position that we were only closed for a 10-week period, and then we were able to restart scaling up the business again. So we were looking at different options as far as the 360 tours went, but didn't get in too much depth as far as exploring that side of things went, just because we were lucky enough to be able to open our doors before we got too far down that rabbit hole.
Got it. Shane, I'm going to follow up with this, right? I noticed that you guys opened at end of May, and it happened to be near the winter holidays for New Zealand, from what I understand. I think maybe it'll be helpful for you to share some insights to whether this whole focus on maybe domestic audience and with the upcoming holiday, has it shown positive signs for Hobbiton that it is something that attractions can look forward to, a domestic market riding on certain holidays and stuff? Have there been positive signs?
Yes, 100%. And even, I'm sure it's the same for everyone in the discussion, even opening the doors means a lot to the team. Just opening those doors and having the opportunity to host people again was extremely exciting for our whole team and meant a lot to our staff and our community. And then the icing on the cake was people actually turned up and wanted to take part in our tours again, which was pretty exciting. But what we have done is we had to look at how we were going to run tours once we opened. There were still restrictions on group sizes and gatherings, so we had to open with smaller groups than what we would do normally. But we've played with our group sizes. We have put in the likes of more sanitation stations and a little bit of that social distancing at the start to make sure we were doing our part. But at the core of it, we wanted to make sure we stayed a really, really high quality experience. So if we weren't 100% certain that we could reopen the doors and give the quality experience just as good, if not better, than what we were before COVID hit, we would have kept closed until we had the opportunity to reopen. So we could reopen 2 weeks before we actually hosted our first person, but we took the time to bring the team back in, spend the time retraining, looking at what was in front of us because there was so much information that was changing on a daily basis, and sit down and work out how we were going to give that good quality experience by still keeping our guests safe. And with that as well, we reduced our tour services to give bigger gaps between groups. We cut our group size in half, so then we could do social distancing on the coach. So there was a lot we had to take into account to make sure we were giving a quality experience safely.
Right, and I'm sure that that whole entire investment into safety measures would have paid off. Would you rate the consumer kind of confidence high? And that is that reflected in the demand that you're seeing? Is that positive?
Yeah, it is. Our support by our domestic market so far has been really humbling and really positive. We were wondering how many people we would have coming through. We were hopeful we should have a handful of people, but as you mentioned before, JK, we are now in the holiday period and we're back to hosting around 500 people a day, which is pretty exciting for the team out here in the domestic market. So with the New Zealand public being in lockdown for so long, they all seemed that they were ready now it is safe to do so to get out and start exploring again. So the New Zealand tourism attractions as a whole have been quite humbled with the support by the New Zealanders getting out there, experiencing those attractions with their families.
That's great. But that, any comments, any add-ons to your side of the world, the museums, anything that they're doing in this time that is trying to develop and change to this situation?
Yeah, so as soon as everything kind of hit us with COVID and we did the temporary closings, I want to say kind of like in April-ish, a lot of my members were just like, we need to do something. So what can we do? So a lot of the conversations that I was having was, okay, well, let's take this time to increase your social media footprint. Let's also make sure that you're doing some public programming. And you can do all of that virtual. You want to remain in everybody's face, although you're temporarily closed. So that's exactly what was happening. And some of the museums were doing it without even consulting me, which I was like, yay! Because we really are an organization where we hit the ground running, do the work, make sure that we're out in the community. So it was kind of different for us not to be in the community. And then we had the civil unrest. So we had to do something. And what wound up happening is we had an uptick, not just in AAAM on my website, but on all of our websites, where folks wanted to be connected to African American museums, not just because of being in the house because of COVID, but also our double pandemic, which is we're dealing with COVID, but then we're also dealing with the civil unrest because of the unfortunate murders of, Breonna and everybody. I'm sorry, I have to say that. So at any rate, it's a lot of stuff going on. So what wound up happening, which was really nice to see, is that we had a few of our museums really just get out into the community in a different way. So they were having public programs virtually, but then as protests were happening, the protesters would end at their museum. So that happened at the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, Tennessee, and it was just happening all over the place. So we had to address not just COVID, because now you have people at your space, not in your space, but at your space that want to connect to what you do. And we are always on the pulse of social justice. A lot of our museums were founded through protest movements, so we have to stay true to that. So as people were trying to connect, public programming, we also had public programming for AAAM when we noticed that our members were like, what do I do now? Like, I'm temporarily closed. I don't know how to raise money in this time. So we wound up doing COVID leadership series. And we invited all of our executive directors to it. It was very well received. So we did fundraising. We did what do you do when your doors are closed and you just don't know what to do? And we have a lot of we have a lot of folks in our membership who have dealt with hurricanes. One of our members said they close every 3 years and they feel like they have to redo all the time because they are right there in Louisiana getting a hurricane every 3 years. So it's really just always making sure that they're on and in the front of everyone. And then we're also doing timed, excuse me, as David mentioned, we're doing time entries now as folks are slowly opening up, making sure that there are sanitized stations, as Shane said, all over the place. You're just trying to figure out, how do you do your social distancing? Where do you put the little stickers to make sure that everybody knows what 6 feet looks like? Because for some reason, I feel like everybody all of a sudden doesn't know what 6 feet looks like, just like you don't know what a 5-car length looks like when you're driving. It's insane. So now we have to guide them. And we, you know, so, and you have 500 people showing up. So yeah, it's very interesting. So, you know, it's really just this, I feel that in our industry, not just African American museums, but just tourism in general, I feel that it's our responsibility to really show folks like how to do it right, because we're slowly opening up anyway, right? So we've already seen it happen in the grocery stores. Everybody knows by now how to get your bananas and how to get your apples. So we can just move that right over and show folks how to be responsible. So I hope that answered your question, JK, because yes. Not my show.
No, so. No, I think it does. Right? I think the whole idea here is that, you know, on a general level, that it goes down sometimes to the basic, right, of reinforcing the trust. As you can see in the various websites, how the COVID measures are very, very much visible, getting consumer confidence that the attractions are ready. I think that's a very, very big part that the attractions and tours are already done. And I think we've seen from Sarah and from Shane the content part of it, and obviously great positive signs from Shane that, you know, the domestic market is reacting to such safety measures and they are participating in the tours. I think that's one of the things that we can highlight about, right? So David, again, macro perspective, right? With suppliers, you know, knowing so much about how they are operating and stuff. Do you have any sharing that you can share about some of the measures or something more interesting or creative that you're seeing outside of everything else to possibly attract in more customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one of the biggest things that that we've done is we have spent at Tripadvisor with Viator as well. We have spent a lot of time and effort kind of polling customers, and even about I want to say 3 weeks ago or so, put out a white paper on kind of what the recovery looks like. But more, you know, most importantly, for the purpose of this call, is really that kind of drilling down and understanding what the consumer is looking for and what they're seeking. The two biggest things that stood out, I don't think are big surprises, but the way that operators, museums, suppliers, the way that they handle it, I think goes to tell a big thing. And the first is that they're looking to know the health and safety and what the individual operator is doing. We did we did three kind of really cool things, I think. First, we reached out to every one of our suppliers and said, what are you doing from a safety perspective? This is what the customers are saying they want to see. We wanted to see how that was happening on the ground, and, you know, when the attractions or tours open. And then what we did was we took and we made it so that the traveler can actually sort on two very important things. One is whether or not safety measures are being taken, and the other is another big thing that we found through the research, which was people are looking at doing small group and or family oriented. Where can I kind of go with my little circle and be away from the crowds? So we added two filters to help suppliers showcase that they are either taking extensive safety measures or is a good fit for, away from the crowd. And that could be a small group, that could be outdoors. There's a number of things that go into that algorithm that decides whether or not it's good to be away from people. I think a couple other big things that I've noticed, and this was in the report as well, is flexibility. A lot of, if you rewind a year, there was a lot of all sales final when it came to museums, when it came to tickets, and it came to things like that. And I think the consumer is definitely looking for the flexibility. They want to know that if they have to stay home for one reason or another because of COVID, that it's not going to be a problem. That flexibility comes either from a cancel perspective or from kind of a last minute booking perspective as well. So, I see a lot of people becoming more flexible, but also doing kind of upping the ante on revenue management and kind of inventory control to make sure that, you're getting as many people through that you're allowed to, and also, not leaving folks out that want to get in.
Right. I think one of the things that probably the viewers of this channel is interested to find out, from the panelists over here is, do stuff like promotions, deals itself, could they work in trying to support, interest in revisiting all these attractions again? Any thoughts, any insights if deals, promos have worked well in getting consumers back into the attractions? Maybe David, Shane, Burdette can share.
I'll give my 2 cents, and then I will definitely defer to the pros on this as well. From a feet on the ground and really being engaged with the specific consumer. But there is opportunity for promotions, and I think as we look at we've talked about the domestic market, and I think the promotions almost need to be different than what they've been in the past, in a way that makes it so that your product that you're offering is more appealing to the person that is 30 minutes away rather than 20 hours away. And I think kind of create the value for the local consumer. Value, I think, is more important than promotion. That's just my take. But I think that, a good way to be able to kind of show that is by doing some sort of promotions.
Yeah, I'll jump in here now as well. I agree with what David has just said. So I think you're better off going down the value add side of things than going for a direct discount. There is a lot of noise at the moment around on social media and different platforms in New Zealand about tourism being overpriced and all that type of thing. But that noise that you hear on social media is never the reflection of society. It's just a very vocal minority. So we were feeling a lot of pressure on the opening when we were going to open our doors, because it felt like from a domestic point of view, we were getting a lot of pressure to start discounting, but we've never had an international price and a domestic price. We've just had our price, and we believe we're good value for money for what we are offering. So we stuck by our guns and we maintained our pricing. And the main reason we did that is because if we maintain our pricing, we can carry on offering that core experience. And then from a business point of view, we don't have to reassess things and then start cutting corners to make sure that we're not running at a massive loss. So it's just looking at that value over volume point of view, and we believe that we are worth it. But what we have done as far as promotions is change the way we're talking to the domestic market. Previously, we've been 80% international, 20% domestic. For us, children under 8 have always gone free of charge, but we've never promoted that. But now that we're connecting with New Zealanders and families, a lot of our messaging we've flipped around to be talking about children go free. So it's the same price structure that we've always had. We're just highlighting different pieces to show value to different market segments as they come through. So that children go free is something that we're talking about heavily now. And also over the school holiday period, we've also just put in a family package to try and attract families, and also a gold card deal as well for our citizens that are over 65. who once we come out of the school holiday period, they're more likely to travel during the week to try and fill out the spread of guests for us as well. Yes, but that's just my point of view. I know a lot of people are in a different situation, but we're lucky that we decided to be a bit more, a bit more targeted with just how we talked about what we were doing.
I'll go really quickly. Our museums, I agree with both Shane and David. We have to pivot to speak to the folks who are local, because we have so many different states doing different things. So, one state can be super strict with masks and social distancing, and another one, they're allowing folks to go to the beach. So we're watching that, right? And a lot of our museums are doing more local programming, but then also local advertising. So I've been seeing that a lot. But the programming piece is very neat because they're still doing their virtual stuff. They're also partnering with folks to do with companies to actually increase the virtual experience. So although AR, I think that's what it is, right? Artificial, yeah. AI, my husband is correcting me as he always does. So, but we're getting a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of just innovative increase in technology. So we have a couple of companies that our museums are working with that are actually just showing you how to go through the museum, and it's being narrated, and you're going on a tour. I think for what Shane's doing, I haven't been to your place, but it would be so neat to put on some goggles and just ride around the Hobbits and say hi and things of that nature. And our museums could probably do the same. But I think that we're going to have to do things a little differently. And you can still charge your full price. You just have to increase, your benefits and increase the experience in a digital platform, because I think by now we all have Zoom fatigue. So we just have to figure out how to do things. Look, everybody's laughing because everybody does. So, we all have fatigue of just, not for this call. I can tell you, I was super excited. But, we all have fatigue of just being in front of the computers all day. So we have to think of different ways to engage our visitors. And I think that's it.
Great. I think we're running a little bit short of time, and I'm going to go into to do a kind of quick closing. I think it seems like on a broad level itself, there are a few things. Right? Obviously, a very swift reaction with indicators again on the COVID situation and making very, very big changes. I think on a broad level, instilling a sense of confidence amongst the consumers about the safety measures, being very visible about that, and adjusting operations to fit that itself. And I think the last point that was mentioned, I think, was also about really being a little bit creative and listening to the consumers. What do they want, right? And addressing that. And it's not always about price. It's about giving them value and ensuring that when they come in, given that they have confidence, they're getting the utmost value out of this whole experience that they're finally getting to enjoy. I think that seems to be a broad thematic about what attractions and tours activities are currently working on. I'm going to go into to kind of close this session with two very quick questions, maybe for the entire panel, right? First question, two biggest takeaway in a short sentence that you've taken out of this entire COVID situation, and are you looking forward to the second half of 2020? We'll start with Sarah. Two big takeaways. Sarah, I think you're on mute.
One of my takeaways is you can never find the unmute button in Zoom when you get to go to a question in these. I think one of our biggest takeaways is, data has been so important. I think that's one thing and we continue to strengthen understanding who our customer is. And I think that's been invaluable over this whole COVID situation. And that will really help direct our reopening and understand the products that we offer. So data has been one of the essential things, is that, I can't say enough to people, understand who your customer is, get data on them, understand where they're coming from, understand what they're purchasing, So that's been a big one. And am I looking forward to the end of 2020? Absolutely. I can't wait till we can open our doors. If it's to a local audience, that's fantastic. We just want to get our guides back out there, our performers back on stage. So 100%.
Shane?
My two biggest takeaways throughout this journey that's been a few months, that feels like a few years, would be, as I think most people have said, just listening to your customers, listening to the market and adapting and giving them what they want. And that's the biggest thing we've done. We've been able to get our product up and running again and introduce some experiences such as our evening banquet tour sooner rather than later, just because we've been listening to our customers, what they want and what type of experiences they want to have with us. And the last thing would be just to believe in your product. I know it's quite an uncertain time when you're closed and you've got all these things going through your head thinking, well, maybe I need to do this or I need to do that. Maybe I should change this or that. But the reason that you have been so successful over the years is because you are a quality product, an iconic product. So I think if you believe in your product, don't try and reinvent the wheel. Open the doors. Hopefully people will come. Give them those good experiences that they've always had.
Burdette?
I think the biggest takeaway is just being able to be flexible and pivoting. The one thing, life is like a box of chocolates. You seriously never know what you're going to get. Just 2020 has taught us that all, right? Like you just don't know. So like just watching what your visitors want. Right now, I mean, before I was on this call, I was getting ready for, I'm planning our virtual conference, which was supposed to be in person. So there's things that I have to even do. So yeah, just making sure that we're being flexible and pivoting. And I feel like that's the thing that's going to sustain us through this. And then also, you asked about, am I ready for the next phase? I am, but I'm also cautious because I don't know what 2021 is going to hold. But yeah, I'm really excited for what comes next as far as our museums are concerned. Even our organization, we might just have to do hybrid, part virtual and part in person, and that's okay. That's truly okay, because there's going to be people in Singapore who want to come to our museums, or to the Sydney excuse me, to the Sydney Opera House, or to the Hobbit House. I'm sorry, it's probably not the Hobbit House. I'm probably just making up my own because I love the H and the H together. But there's probably people who want to do virtual things as well. So I think just a matter of staying pivoting and flexible.
Pivot.
Wow, I get to go last. That means I can't use any of the 6 key things that everybody else has used. So, I think the biggest thing for me is, appreciate what you have, but don't ever take it for granted. And I mean, that goes for everything in life, but I think it really, really, if you think back to January, February into March, we were all planning, hard into 2020. How great is it going to be? What are we going to do? And then, we had to massively pivot from there. And I think the biggest thing for me was kind of like, never accept that you're going to continue getting what you're getting. And, that was a big thing for me to learn, because we were in a great spot and everything was, things were going very well. And then, we spent 3 months closing things down and canceling reservations like everybody else did. That was a big thing. The other big one is, again, listen to your customer. Ask them. They will tell you what you need to do. And, we've been doing a lot of that, and we've been making changes to our product that helps sell all of everyone on this call's products, so that we can give the customer a good experience. They'll tell you what you want. Listen to them, and I think that's a good way to approach it. And yeah, I'm absolutely excited about the end of 2020. The second half for sure. Again, Who knows what it's going to be? We're seeing some closures now, so we're going to have to remain nimble. But I think that time is going to definitely help, and I think that as we continue to grow, I think that that's going to continue to be a big factor for 2020.
JK,
Great, thank you.
Can I
Yes,
be really
please.
rude and jump in now? Because David's just triggered me.
Uh-oh.
And just at the moment, I realised, not triggered me, that's the wrong word. He's triggered an idea. Not triggered, bad way. Oh, so close. But just as David mentioned something, as we are all in different parts of the journey on the way back through, I think it's important as well, as you said, not taking things for granted. I was one of those people that was a bit naive because I thought I was in a pretty safe industry because there'll always be tourists, and now I've learned that things can be very different. But as people start to rebuild as we've had, it's really important to celebrate those small wins on the way back through. But as a team, as we've hosted 50 tourists, we celebrated that, and then we celebrated 100. We hit 100 tourists one day, and we celebrated that as a huge milestone. This time last year, 100 tourists in a day would have been a disaster, but in the current environment, that's a huge success. So just a little bonus one from me is it's important to celebrate those little small wins on the way back through on the rebuild process.
Definitely.
Loving it, Shane. I think that's exactly the whole point, right? I think, the part that the whole idea that travel itself has been very resilient. I think we have been very flexible and trying to navigate these uncertain times. And it's telling, right, that the whole entire industry is rallying towards, a situation of change, and yet at the same time, confident, hopefully, of our own products and looking forward for a hopeful, more brighter future ahead as we pull through. And I think we will, right? And given the sharing today, I'm really happy to have all of you here sharing with us all these insights. And we've kind of come to the end of this episode of Tripadvisor Talk. Firstly, again, thank you all for our panelists, Sarah, Shane, Burdette, David, for such an insightful, deep discussion. And also for our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in again. You can check out some of our episodes that zero in on other topics like hotel recovery, sustainable tourism, impact of COVID on F&B, and many thanks again to everyone here who has spent time with me. Last but not least, everyone, stay safe, and remember, in times like this, there is good out there. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
See everybody.